I never liked hospitals. Even when I was a child, their bright walls and antiseptic sting in the air filled me with unease. They felt more like mausoleums than sanctuaries, places where life clung on just long enough to be carried out on a stretcher. I never imagined I'd one day be pacing the polished floor of one at midnight, clutching my daughter's hand and praying for answers. Emily's cough had worsened so suddenly. One moment she was watching cartoons, the next she was bent double, hacking so hard her little frame shook. By the time I got her into the car, her skin burned with fever. I drove through sheets of rain toward St. Augustine Medical Center, the town's shining jewel. They called it state-of-the-art, a modern miracle of glass and steel. But as it rose against the storm, I felt only dread. The sliding doors sighed open. Inside, the lobby was too bright, too polished. Abstract paintings hung on the walls, swirls of black and red that felt more violent than comforting. For a children's hospital, the place looked oddly cold, like someone had scrubbed the humanity out of it. Emily clung to me, coughing into her sleeve. She was 9, but that night she seemed smaller, like the hospital's white glare was leaching her strength. "It's okay, Em," I whispered. "We'll get you checked out. Just a doctor's visit. You'll be fine." The receptionist didn't look up as we approached. Her skin was pale, her fingers long and veined. Without a word, she slid a clipboard toward me. "Fill this out," she murmured. Her voice sounded distant, like it came from a hallway far away. I sat with Emily in the waiting area, scrawling answers as her head leaned against my shoulder. Around us, other patients sat motionless, an old man in a wheelchair, a woman with her arm in a sling, a boy staring at the floor. No one spoke. The air pressed down like wet cloth. When I returned the clipboard, the receptionist slid it into a drawer without glancing at it. "Doctor will see her soon." We waited. Time stretched strangely. No clocks marked the hours, and the lights never dimmed. It could have been minutes or an hour. At last, a nurse appeared. Tall, masked, silent. "Emily?" she asked. I rose, guiding Emily by the hand. The nurse turned without another word, leading us into a hallway that felt longer than it should have been. Fluorescent lights flickered, buzzing faintly. The walls seemed to narrow with every step, as though the hospital wanted to swallow us. She ushered us into a small exam room. A doctor stood waiting, coat pristine, stethoscope around his neck, face unsettlingly blank. His features looked unfinished, as though they'd been smoothed away. "Sit," he said. Emily climbed onto the table. I hovered close, uneasy. The doctor pressed the stethoscope to her chest, though I never saw him move it. His pen scratched notes furiously. His eyes flicked to me only once, and I felt as if he were staring straight through me. "She will need to stay overnight," he said abruptly. My heart jolted. "Overnight? For a cough? You haven't even—" "It is necessary." His tone left no room for argument. Emily's wide eyes found mine. I forced a smile. "Just for observation, sweetheart. Nothing serious." The nurse wheeled in a chair. "That's not necessary. She can walk," I protested. "Hospital policy," the nurse said, voice flat as stone. I helped Emily sit. The wheels rolled noiselessly as we followed deeper into the hospital. The corridors shifted, no longer gleaming and modern but narrow, paint chipped, air colder. The buzzing above grew louder, like insects trapped in the lights. Finally, we reached her room. White walls, a narrow bed, machines that beeped softly. No windows, just one door. "You may stay," the nurse said, "but do not leave the room after midnight." The words snagged in my chest. Why midnight? She tilted her head in a way that made my skin crawl. "For your safety." Then she was gone, door closing with a soft click. I sat by Emily's bed as she drifted into uneasy sleep. The fluorescent light hummed overhead, steady, unblinking. Machines ticked in quiet rhythm. That's when I noticed the paintings. At first glance, they seemed abstract, smudges of gray, streaks of black. But the longer I looked, the clearer they became. Faces. Distorted, screaming faces pressed against some invisible barrier, mouths open in silent terror. And every few minutes I swore one of them shifted, like someone inside was struggling to get out. Emily slept fitfully, coughing in her dreams. I sat in the stiff chair beside her bed, trying to convince myself that everything was normal, that hospitals always felt strange to anxious parents, that the paintings on the wall were nothing but abstract art. But every time I blinked, I could swear the faces shifted closer, mouths opening wider, eyes bulging as if in warning. I must have dozed off, because the sound of the door opening jolted me awake. A nurse stood in the doorway, the same masked woman as before. "It is time for her medication," she said. "What medication?" I asked. Her eyes, what little I could see above the mask, seemed unfocused. "Hospital policy." She approached with a tray. On it lay a small cup of thick, black liquid. Not cough syrup, not anything I'd ever seen prescribed for a child. "No," I said, stepping between her and the bed. "What is that?" "Necessary," the nurse repeated. She moved as if to brush past me. I planted a hand on the tray, knocking it slightly. The liquid inside trembled, rippling like oil on water. A smell wafted up, metallic, sweet, and foul all at once, like rusting fruit. Emily stirred, murmuring. I turned on the nurse, anger rising. "You're not giving her that." For a moment, the nurse simply stared. Then she tilted her head, slow and unnatural, until her neck bent at an angle no human neck should. "Hospital policy," she whispered, and turned to leave. She carried the tray with her, black liquid unspilled. The door clicked shut behind her. I locked it. My heart pounded as I checked on Emily. She was sweating, pale, her breaths coming in shallow rasps. I almost ran out into the hall to demand answers, but her words came back to me. "Do not leave the room after midnight." I checked the clock on my phone. 12:14 a.m. The machines beeped steadily. Emily's chest rose and fell. The walls pressed closer, and the buzzing light seemed louder than before. Then the power cut out. The room plunged into darkness. The machines died, their steady beeping silenced. My breath caught, and from the corner of the room, where no one stood, a voice whispered Emily's name. I froze. "Emily." It was soft, drawn out, almost tender. But it didn't belong to me, or the nurse, or anyone I knew. It came from the wall. I lunged for my phone, its glow weak but enough to throw light across the room. Emily stirred, whimpering. On the wall above her bed, the faces in the painting had shifted again. Their mouths gaped wider, their hands pressed harder against the surface. And one of them, pale, thin, with hollow eyes, was mouthing a word. "Daddy." My stomach turned to ice. The machines flickered back on. The fluorescent light buzzed, flooding the room once more. The painting looked still again, only distorted shapes. I told myself I was imagining things. Stress, exhaustion. But then Emily coughed so violently she nearly rolled off the bed. I held her until she settled, trembling. When I looked up, the door was open. The nurse stood in the hallway, mask still on. She didn't move, didn't breathe. She just stood there, watching. And behind her, further down the corridor, I saw movement. Shadows, sliding across the floor, too tall and too thin to be human. I slammed the door and locked it again. My chest heaved. Something wasn't right in this hospital. Something far worse than incompetent staff or poor treatment. I pulled the chair against the door and stayed awake until dawn. When morning came, the sunlight didn't. The fluorescent light above hummed as it always had. No windows meant I couldn't be sure it was morning at all, except for the doctor arriving as if on cue. He entered without knocking, his waxy face expressionless. "Your daughter is deteriorating," he said. I stood. "Then help her. Do your job." None of this nonsense. Just do what doctors do. His eyes flicked toward Emily, then back to me. You should not have refused the medication. She's not taking anything I don't understand. What was that black liquid? He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned closer until his face was inches from mine. His skin was too smooth, his eyes too flat. Do not leave this floor, he said. Do not wander. It will not go well for you. Then he turned and left, closing the door quietly behind him. I wanted to chase after him, to shake the truth out of him, but Emily stirred again. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale, and for the first time since we'd arrived, I realized I might lose her. I gripped her hand, whispering, I won't let them. I'll keep you safe. But as I sat there, I heard something. From the vent above the bed, a faint scratching, like nails on metal, and a whisper, dozens of whispers, layered together. They said my name. The day dragged on in a haze of humming lights and shuffling footsteps outside the door. No nurses came back to check on Emily. No meals were delivered. The world beyond the walls seemed to move without us, as though we weren't part of the hospital at all. I tried to distract myself by scrolling through my phone, but the signal bar blinked empty. No service. Not even Wi-Fi. Every number I dialed ended in static. Emily stirred awake, her voice cracked and weak. Daddy, can we go home? I smoothed her hair back and forced a smile. Soon, sweetheart. Just need to talk to the doctors. She nodded, but her eyes were glassy, unfocused. Something was draining her here. By mid-afternoon, or what I guessed was afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I cracked the door open and peered down the hallway. Empty. The corridor stretched long and pale, fluorescent lights flickering. A faint echo of footsteps lingered, but no one was in sight. I stepped out, heart hammering, leaving the door propped with my shoe so I wouldn't get locked out. The hall branched into other halls, each indistinguishable from the last. No signs, no maps, just endless white walls. As I wandered, I noticed something strange. The smell. It wasn't antiseptic anymore. It was damp, moldy, like basements or wet stone. I turned a corner and froze. There was a door at the end of the hall, painted a sickly green. A sign above it read, Ward C. I hadn't seen that before. I crept closer. The handle was cold to the touch, and when I pushed it open, a wave of stale air rushed out. Inside, the lights were dimmer, buzzing louder. Beds lined the walls, each with restraints hanging from the rails. The mattresses were stained, sheets torn, and every bed was occupied. Figures lay still, covered in thin blankets. I stepped closer to the nearest one, pulled the sheet back. My stomach lurched. The body beneath was waxy, half rotted. The face frozen in a scream, eyes wide, lips shriveled. A patient, long dead, yet left here as if no one had noticed. I staggered back, nearly tripping over a wheelchair. My hand brushed something taped to the wall, a clipboard brittle with age. Patient name, Emily Carter. My daughter's name. But the date on the paper was 50 years old. I dropped it and fled, slamming the green door shut behind me. My breaths came ragged, echoing too loud in the empty hall. When I returned to Emily's room, my shoe was still there. Relief washed through me. I shoved the door open. She was sitting upright, wide-eyed. Daddy, where'd you go? Her voice was stronger, almost panicked. Just down the hall, I said, kneeling beside her. I'm here now. Her small hands clutched mine, ice cold. Don't leave me again. They come when you leave. Who comes? Before she could answer, the lights flickered violently. The machines beeped erratically, spiking and dropping as if her heartbeat were in chaos. Emily cried out, clutching her chest. I grabbed her hand, shouting, "Help! Somebody help!" The door swung open. Not the nurse this time, but a man in a janitor's uniform. His eyes were sunken, his skin yellowed. He looked at me, then at Emily, then back again. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "What do you mean? She's sick. She needs this place." He cut me off, voice trembling. "It doesn't heal. It feeds." I stared, unsure I'd heard right. "Feeds?" He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. His hands shook. "Patients don't leave. They vanish. The staff, they're not staff. Not anymore." My stomach twisted. "Then what are they?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Caretakers of the dead. They keep it running. They keep it fed." I shook my head. "That's insane." "Is it?" He pointed at the painting on the wall. The faces. Their eyes seemed to follow me now, lips moving silently. "Every soul taken here is trapped," he whispered. "And your daughter. They've marked her." Emily whimpered, sinking lower into the bed. I grabbed his arm. "How do I stop it? Tell me how to save her." He flinched, eyes darting to the hall. "There's a way. The West Wing. Don't let them see you. Find the old records room. Burn what you find there." "What records?" But he shook his head. "Hurry, before midnight, or she won't wake again." Without another word, he slipped back into the hall, vanishing as quickly as he came. I turned to Emily. She was trembling, tears in her eyes. "I won't let them take you," I whispered. "I promise." But in the back of my mind, doubt gnawed. Because when I glanced at the painting again, one of the faces, gaunt, pale, looked exactly like mine. I waited until Emily drifted into another uneasy sleep. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale, but she held onto my hand even in her dreams. I eased my fingers free, whispering a promise that I'd return, then slipped out into the corridor. The hospital was silent, not quiet like an ordinary night shift, but heavy, suffocating, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. My shoes squeaked faintly on the linoleum, each step echoing too loudly. The janitor's words replayed in my head. The West Wing, records room, burn what you find. I had no map, no signs to guide me. The hospital was a labyrinth of identical halls, endless doors. But I noticed something I hadn't before. Some of the fluorescent lights above glowed softer, dimmer, as though aged. The newer halls blazed white. The older ones, abandoned maybe, flickered like candles. I followed the dimmest path. Soon the halls narrowed, paint peeling in strips, tiles cracked. The hum of electricity faded, replaced by dripping water and the faint groan of pipes. The sterile hospital smell gave way to mildew and iron. I found a set of double doors chained shut. The sign above read, "West Wing, restricted." The chains looked old, rusted. Yet when I touched them, they were warm, pulsing faintly, like veins. My stomach knotted. But I tugged hard, and to my surprise, the lock snapped open with a brittle pop, as if it had been waiting. The chains clattered to the floor. I pushed the doors open. The air inside was colder, heavier. My breath fogged. The hall stretched into shadow, walls lined with doors half open, swinging slightly as if moved by unseen hands. Each bore a plaque with a patient's name, many of them scratched out. As I stepped inside, the doors behind me creaked shut on their own. I walked. The first room I peeked into was filled with empty gurneys, their straps frayed. The next held rows of metal cabinets, doors ajar, files spilling across the floor. In another, I saw a dozen IV stands with bags still dripping dark fluid into shattered glass jars. The smell grew worse, sweet rot and chemicals. Then I heard it, a soft dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled along the floor. I froze. From the shadows at the far end of the hall, a figure emerged. A nurse, masked, tall, moving slowly, her feet not quite touching the ground. Her arms dangled unnaturally long at her sides. I ducked into the nearest room, heart pounding. I crouched behind a cabinet, peering through the crack in the door. She drifted past, head twitching as though listening. In her hands, she dragged a gurney. Something lay upon it, covered in a stained sheet. A hand slipped free. Small, pale. A child's hand. My breath caught. For an instant, I thought it was Emily. I nearly bolted after them, but stopped myself. The janitor's words, "records room," anchored me. I had to finish this, or saving Emily would be impossible. When the dragging faded, I crept back into the hall. My hands shook as I moved door to door until finally I saw it. Medical records. Archive. The brass plaque was tarnished, nearly falling off. Inside, the room was vast. Shelves stretched high, sagging under the weight of binders, folders, boxes. Dust thickened the air. At the center sat a desk, its lamp flickering weakly, though no cord connected it to the wall. I rifled through the nearest files. Patient charts, all dated decades ago. Some names I didn't know, others I did. Too many. People from my town, faces I remembered from childhood, neighbors, teachers, even the man who owned the corner store. All listed as patients, all stamped with the same word, DECEASED. But the dates didn't match. Some of those people had lived long after their supposed deaths. Confused, I pulled more files. Same pattern. Officially deceased, but still alive in memory, until eventually they disappeared quietly. Moved away, people assumed, but no, they had ended here. At last, I found it. A thick black folder marked Current Admissions. I opened it with trembling fingers. Emily Carter, Room 417. Status: pending integration. I read the notes. Marked at entry: vitality suitable. Transfer scheduled at midnight. My vision blurred with rage. They'd written her fate like she was a chart, not a child. A sound behind me snapped my head up. The nurse again. She stood in the doorway, mask gleaming under the flickering lamp. Behind her, more figures gathered. Doctors, nurses, attendants. Their faces were waxy, unfinished, their eyes flat. They filled the hall silently, watching. I grabbed the folder, heart hammering. The nurse stepped forward. "You cannot take that." "Try me," I spat. She tilted her head, neck bending until it cracked. "You do not belong here." But she does. They began to advance, slow but certain. I stumbled back, clutching the folder. My eyes darted across the room. At the far wall sat a rusted metal cabinet labeled Incinerator. The janitor's words echoed in my mind. "Burn what you find." I shoved the folder inside. My shaking hand found a lighter on the desk. Its spark weak, but enough. I flicked it, flame flaring, and tossed it into the incinerator. The folder ignited instantly, fire roaring higher than it should, filling the room with a scream, not from me, not from them, but from the very walls. The staff froze, faces twisting, masks cracking to reveal gaping mouths beneath. The shelves shook, files tumbling as the fire spread unnaturally fast. I ran. The screams followed me down the hall as the west wing burned with no smoke, only light, blinding and terrible. The staff didn't chase me. They writhed where they stood, trapped in the fire's glow. I burst back through the chain doors, slamming them behind me. My lungs heaved, my skin cold with sweat. I had done what he said. I had burned it. But would it be enough? I sprinted back toward Emily's room, praying I wasn't too late. When I reached Emily's room, the door stood wide open. My stomach dropped. I sprinted inside. The bed was empty. The machines still beeped, wires dangling loosely where they'd been pulled free. Her blanket lay crumpled on the floor, warm as if she'd only just left. "Emily!" I shouted, my voice cracking. Only the fluorescent buzzing answered. I searched the room frantically, pulling open the bathroom door, yanking at the closet. Nothing. She was gone. I stumbled back into the hall, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. My footsteps echoed, too loud in the emptiness. I shouted again, voice raw. "Emily!" Somewhere deeper in the hospital, Faintly, I heard her cry. I ran. The hallways twisted, unfamiliar. Doors I hadn't seen before opened into rooms that shouldn't exist. Rooms filled with rusted equipment, peeling wallpaper, walls smeared with brown stains. Each step felt like it carried me further from reality. At last, I turned a corner and froze. The green door toward C gaped open. From inside came Emily's muffled sobs. I didn't hesitate. I plunged in. The stench hit me first. Sweet rot and mold, thick enough to choke on. The dim light flickered, revealing rows of beds. But the patients weren't still this time. They twitched and convulsed beneath their sheets, as though something crawled just under their skin. I stumbled forward, eyes locked on the far end where a gurney stood. Emily was strapped down, wrists bound, eyes wide with terror. "Daddy!" she screamed when she saw me. I bolted toward her, but shadows surged from the corners. Doctors and nurses, faces blank, masks hanging loose to reveal gaping mouths. They formed a wall between me and her. "Stay away from her," I roared. One stepped forward, the doctor from before. His waxy skin was cracking, splitting, leaking dark fluid. His eyes were pits. "She belongs to us now," he said calmly. "You burned the records, but the debt remains." I grabbed a metal 4-pole and swung it wildly. It smashed against his head with a wet crack, splitting it open like clay. Black ichor splattered across the floor. He staggered but didn't fall. His hands reached for me, fingers too long, curling like hooks. I swung again, screaming. The pole dented, but this time he dropped, his body dissolving into a puddle that crawled toward the nearest wall. The others shrieked, not human cries but shrill, layered wails. Their forms shivered, shifting like heat waves. I pushed through them, shoving bodies aside. Emily struggled against her restraints, tears streaming. I tore at the straps until they snapped. She threw her arms around me, sobbing into my chest. "We have to go," I gasped, lifting her into my arms. But the staff closed in again, surrounding us. Their mouths opened impossibly wide, revealing rows of teeth that weren't teeth at all, but jagged shards of glass. Their hands clawed at the air, reaching. I turned, searching desperately. At the far wall, behind the rows of twitching patients, I saw it. A door. Old, wooden, blackened with soot. Light leaked from the cracks around it, faint but golden, unlike anything else in this place. Hope. I bolted for it. The patients writhed as I passed, their sheets tearing open to reveal gray, eyeless faces twisted in agony. Their mouths moved, whispering one word over and over. "Stay. Stay. Stay." I kicked them aside, clutching Emily tight, and barreled toward the door. The staff lunged, shrieking. Fingers grazed my arms, leaving burning welts. I reached the door and yanked the handle. It didn't budge. "No!" I screamed, slamming my shoulder against it. Behind me, the figures closed in. Emily cried into my neck. "Daddy, they're coming!" I roared, slamming again, until the wood cracked and splintered. A final shove and it burst open, flooding us with golden light so bright it burned my eyes. We stumbled through, collapsing onto cold tile. The light vanished as the door slammed shut behind us. I blinked, gasping for breath. We were in another corridor, but this one was different, clean, modern, just like the lobby had been when we first entered. The walls gleamed white, the lights buzzed gently, and faint music played over unseen speakers. Emily clutched me tighter. "Daddy, I want to go home." "We will," I said, though my voice shook. I set her down carefully, keeping her hand in mine. My eyes darted around, wary. Something about this new hall felt wrong despite its normality, like a mask stretched over a corpse. At the end of the corridor, glass doors slid open automatically. Beyond them lay what looked like the main lobby again. The receptionist's desk, the waiting chairs, the abstract paintings. But something was off. The receptionist sat at her desk, head bowed. When she looked up, her eyes were gone. just smooth skin where they should have been. "Leaving so soon?" she asked softly. I stepped in front of Emily, heart thundering. "We're leaving," I said firmly. Her lipless smile stretched wide. Few ever do. The automatic doors slid open again, behind her this time, revealing only blackness. Not night, not outside. Just endless, swallowing dark. The receptionist gestured. "All exits lead back inside. This is your home now." Emily whimpered. I gripped her hand tighter, forcing down the terror in my throat. "Number, there has to be a way out." And then I heard it, the janitor's voice. From somewhere unseen, faint but clear. "Basement. Only way. Don't stop." The receptionist's smile faltered, just slightly. I didn't hesitate. I bolted past her desk, dragging Emily with me, searching for the nearest stairwell. My chest heaved, my legs shook, but adrenaline carried me. At last, I found the sign, "Basement Access." A heavy steel door at the far end of the lobby. Behind us, footsteps echoed, dozens of them. The staff were coming. I yanked the door open and we plunged into the stairwell, the door slamming shut above us. The stairs spiraled down into pitch black, the air damp and cold. Emily clutched my arm, trembling. "Daddy, what's down there?" I didn't know. But it was the only chance we had left. "We'll find out," I whispered, "and we'll get out. I promise." The echoes grew louder above us, doors slamming, screams echoing down the stairwell. The staff were close. I lifted Emily into my arms and ran down the stairs, deeper into the dark, toward whatever waited below. That's it. Please like and subscribe, and comment what would you do. Thank you, and have a scary night.